And we would like to welcome in studio Dan Perry, international affairs analyst and the former Europe and Middle East editor at the Associated Press. Thank you very much for being with us. Let's start with Gaza, because this is a milestone for the IDF. We've heard for so many months about this operation in Rafah, both from Israel, how important it is in terms of the IDF operation, but also from the Americans, from the Egyptians who were objecting to the wide-scale operation. Now, speak to us about the at least the operational importance of this.
It's extremely important. The Philadelphia corridor basically runs along the entire length of Gaza's southern border with Egypt, and under it go many, many tunnels that have been used by Hamas to smuggle weaponry and in general to essentially carry out their export-import economy. Those tunnels must be destroyed, essentially. And to the extent that cutting Gaza off from Egypt, which is what this achieves, enables Israel to destroy all those tunnels, because some of them have entrances from within the breadth of the strip that Israel has occupied, that obviously serves the goals of the war very well. However, the real aim of the Gaza operation was to take out Hamas in its last remaining redoubt inside Rafah town proper. That is now effectively surrounded, but they haven't yet taken over Rafah proper. Right. So the truth is that the big test that might, in an optimal scenario, enable the end of the war successfully awaits an entry by Israel into the inner neighborhoods of Rafah, where it's possible that the Hamas leadership dwells, where it's possible that they're holding many, if not all, the hostages as human shields, and that hasn't yet happened.
But it does cut off at least that lifeline of the smuggling and the ability of Hamas to cross
absolutely
in and out of Gaza?
With the caveat that there may be tunnels that originate in Egypt and go into Gaza deeper inside than the width of that Philadelphia corridor. Right. That actually is suspected.
They'll have to dismantle all the tunnels that go on.
I don't see how Israel completes this without going into Rafah. And there are risks that attach to that from Israel's perspective, mainly the lives of the hostages, who maybe there's shields. Right. But the rather successful Israeli effort to move many hundreds of thousands of displaced persons out of Rafah further north aids in that process, and also, by the way, diminishes global opposition. You spoke of Egypt opposing and the world opposing. The main reason the world opposed is because they feared the bloodbath with over 1 million displaced people there. Israel has addressed that somewhat convincingly.
Yeah, and let's now speak about the strategic importance of this, because it comes at a time where U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be visiting Israel and the region on Monday. We saw the CIA chief William Burns in Doha. We saw other U.S. envoys in Cairo as well, all in a push to bring about a hostage release deal. Strategically, when Israel advances to this degree in Rafah, how does that help or not the chances of convincing Hamas to agree to any sort of a deal right now?
Well, I got to be honest with you, Guy. I have been among the people who were skeptical from the beginning of the notion that military pressure on Hamas will cause them to cough up the hostages. For the simple reason that Hamas doesn't operate in the Western Euclidean universe that most observers in the West, and that perhaps you or I operate in. This is an organization that sanctifies martyrdom and suicide. And it's conceivable that Yahya Sinwar and his ilk don't mind dying in a blaze of glory. So that is a general type of skepticism. However, right now, if Israel really is preparing to move into Rafah, having cut it off from Egypt, having already begun to soften up the defenses of Rafah around a perimeter, now is the time, I would say, to ratchet up the pressure maximally. In other words, if pressure can ever help, at the moment when a deal's on the table, this is one that should be put to the test. So if I were the government, I would not dither in moving into Rafah with all conceivable speed, because I think the world's patience for forever war here, because of the civilian casualties, is running out. Israel's having removed most of the displaced people bought it some time. The fact that Israel is now engaging constructively in an end of war discussion with Hamas, we'll see what that really means about what happens after the war. But there is a sense that Israel's engaging constructively. I think for as long as that can possibly be dragged out, a week or two or three, Israel has not carte blanche, but an opportunity to finish the job in Rafah, if indeed it can be finished.
And these operations in Gaza obviously have deeper and wider consequences, because this is our next topic. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has informed Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan of the decision to include the State of Israel in the UN blacklist of nations harming children in conflict zones. We're also hearing condemnations from Benny Gantz. He says Israel has witnessed the hypocrisy of the international institutions since its establishment, but today's UN decision represents a historic low. Your take?
I agree with look, the United Nations played a very important role post-World War II in establishing a global order where different countries can somehow collaborate along many different areas, from education to alleviating poverty to promoting human rights. It is very sad when that institution discredits itself and undermines its ultimate goal by plainly masquerading as something else when the actual goal is purely political. Explain to me why the United States is not on this blacklist. The United States and its allies killed many children, undoubtedly, in Mosul and Raqqa while fighting Islamic State, a somewhat analogous situation just a few years ago. Did anyone contemplate putting the U.S. on a blacklist?
Yeah, Israel is not judged by the same moral standards of other nations.
But I don't think that appears in the UN Charter, that each country will be judged in accordance to the size of its military or to its popularity among the General Assembly. The one useful thing at the UN is the Security Council, where, because of American support, Israel can still expect a degree of fair treatment, which is why, and one more reason why, I feel it's unfortunate that the current government's been so indifferent about its relations with the Biden administration. Seems to me unwise. But the UN in general really has disgraced itself today.
And we should note that this decision of the UN is not by a majority of countries hostile to Israel, but by the UN Secretary General.
The Secretary General is problematic. UN bodies like the UN Human Rights Council, which has had more anti-Israel resolutions in the past several decades than against all other countries combined. This is a pathetic joke. And it's sad, because I want there to be a UN Human Rights Council that is not ridiculous, but they're making themselves ridiculous.
National Unity Party leader Benny Gantz has announced he will address the press tomorrow night, a time that coincides with the expiration of the deadline he set for Prime Minister Netanyahu for his resignation from the government. Netanyahu is set to speak to the public right after Gantz's dramatic announcement. Dan Perry is still with me. Why resign and why now?
Well, he wants Netanyahu to conduct the war differently. If Benny Gantz had his way, then the government would have said yes to the Biden plan, essentially, and would have agreed.
This is what Biden presented, an Israeli plan that Netanyahu voted for in the cabinet.
The broader Biden plan. I mean, the rift between Gantz and Netanyahu began in late November, December, when Biden presented a grand plan that would have involved peace with Saudi Arabia, would have involved the PA being restored to Gaza, which many people in Israel think is a good idea and not a bad idea. Netanyahu has continued his policy of equating the PA with Hamas, so in my view, very dishonestly and unfairly and almost outrageously.
The same Palestinian Authority that continues to pay stipends to terrorists on a daily basis.
But which does not, as far as I know, carry out massacres, beheadings,
I still haven't seen the condemnation of the October 7th attack. We're all waiting for
actually, that's a point of debate. I thought I did, but it wasn't very convincing. Anyway, there's a grand design that Biden put on the table 5 months ago, and Netanyahu has been rejecting it and exposing himself to charges that he's prolonging the war because of political advantages that accrue to him, and we've discussed this many times. Gantz has run out of patience with this. However, I do think that if there's a chance that in the next week or two, quite dramatic ceasefire deal will be signed,
there is a lot of
where Netanyahu appears to move many steps towards accepting Biden's offers. It's a little bit lame for Gantz to resign while that's happening. So it wouldn't surprise me if tomorrow he'll announce that he's prolonging the deadline. On the other hand, that would make him look a little weak, because the expectation is that he finally leaves. And by the way, the other issue in the background to all this has to do with an internal Israeli political dispute over drafting the Haredim. And that's that's another
many things
huge matter that's not inside baseball. That's major.
On the table, and
that may be the pretext.
Yeah, and Gantz surely can influence them a lot more while he's inside.
No doubt, and more than this, if he really leaves the government tomorrow, that will rob the government of what international legitimacy they currently still enjoy.
Netanyahu wants that
he absolutely
as
wants
well,
that.
and needs it. Dan Perry, thank you very much.